I was turning 63 that rainy Tuesday evening, and all I wanted was a simple dinner with my son Robert, his wife Vanessa, and a handful of old friends. Nothing fancy or excessive. Just good food, friendly faces, and maybe a toast to another year of making it through on my own. Instead, I ended that night in stunned silence, watching across a restaurant table as my only child claimed ownership of something that had never been his to take. The evening started normally enough. The restaurant was one of those trendy places Vanessa had picked. Dim lighting, overpriced cocktails, servers who called everyone folks. I had barely settled into my chair when Vanessa pushed a small gift bag toward me, tissue paper sticking out in all directions. "Open it," she said, her eyes fixed on my face. Inside was a baby onesie with words printed on it. "World's Greatest Grammy." "We thought it was time to tell you," Vanessa said, her smile wide and perfect. "And to start planning the nursery. Right, Rob?" Robert nodded, looking oddly calm. "Yeah, especially now that we'll have the extra space." I blinked confused. "Extra space?" Vanessa leaned across the table. "We're just so thankful you're doing this, Helen. Not every mother would be this generous." The table went quiet. I frowned, not understanding what I had supposedly agreed to. Before I could ask, Robert stood up and tapped his knife against his water glass. "Can I have everyone's attention?" he said, his voice raised just enough to make nearby diners turn their heads. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating my amazing mom's birthday. It's also about a big change for our family." Vanessa pulled out her phone and started recording. "We're moving into Mom's condo," Robert announced with a broad smile. "It just makes sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore, and we're starting a family. It's such a wonderful gift. So generous. Let's raise a glass to the woman who made it happen." Glasses clinked around me. I didn't move. My fork stayed suspended in midair. Robert looked at me, his smile stiff. "Right, Mom?" Everyone stared, waiting for my reaction. I nodded automatically, not because I agreed but because I was blindsided. My brain froze. I felt trapped in a scene from a play I'd never rehearsed for. I managed a weak smile, took a small sip of wine, and waited for the conversation to move on. But it didn't, not really. Vanessa launched into her plans for redecorating my condo. New paint, nursery themes replacing my outdated furniture. She laughed and said, "Of course, we'll let you visit anytime. You can even keep your plants on the balcony if you want." Robert added, "We'll give you plenty of time to pack up. No rush." They hadn't even asked me. They'd decided among themselves that my home, the place I'd shared with my late husband Thomas for 32 years, where we'd built our lives together, where I'd cried when I got the call about his heart attack 3 years ago, was now going to be their starter home for a family. I excused myself before dessert arrived. Robert gave me a look that suggested I was overreacting, but I just said I wasn't feeling well. Vanessa offered to call me a ride. I refused. I walked 4 blocks in uncomfortable shoes until my feet hurt and my chest felt tight, but it was the only way to calm the storm inside my head. By the time I got home, my condo felt different. Not safe, not mine. I locked the door, then checked it twice. Their voices kept repeating in my mind. Vanessa laughing about my old lady curtains. Robert saying I didn't need the space. Thomas's photos lined the bookshelf. Suddenly they looked like warnings, not memories. I sat at my kitchen table with my palms flat against the surface, unable to move for what felt like an hour. When I finally stood up, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months, Thomas's old file folders. Legal documents, financial papers, emergency contacts. The last time I'd looked through them was right after his funeral 3 years ago. I found something I'd forgotten. A power of attorney form from 2 years earlier, signed during a hospital stay when I had pneumonia. Robert's name was on it. My stomach turned. I texted my lawyer Judith at midnight and asked if it was still valid. Her reply came at 7 a.m. "If you didn't cancel it, yes. We need to talk." That's when I understood. Robert wasn't guessing or asking. He was executing a plan. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I kept seeing Robert's face as he clinked that glass and made his announcement. The way he looked at me. Not with love or even hesitation, but with certainty, like I was a transaction being completed. I sat on the couch with my robe pulled tight around me, staring at nothing while Vanessa's voice played on repeat in my head. "We're just so thankful you agreed." But I never agreed. Not with words, not with nods. I just didn't stop them. That was my mistake. When I checked my phone in the morning, Vanessa had posted a video online. Slow camera movements across my living room set to soft music. The caption read, "Beginning our family's next chapter. Saying goodbye to Grammy's place and hello to our new home. My couch, my bookshelves, my window with the curtains Thomas and I had picked together years ago." Dozens of comments congratulated them. I scrolled until I felt sick. Robert had already emailed me a transition plan. A list of items they wanted removed within the month, suggested dates for the handover, and a link to a Pinterest board labeled Modern Nursery Ideas. There were photos of my bedroom transformed into a baby's room. I hadn't even responded to the dinner yet. I hadn't said yes, but they were already acting as if I had. I called Judith before 9 a.m. Her tone grew sharp the moment I mentioned Robert's name on the old power of attorney. "You need to come in today," she said. I dressed carefully that morning, pressed pants, blouse, shoes that made noise when I walked. I gathered every folder, every deed, every paper I could find related to my property and finances. The cab ride to Judith's office felt longer than usual. I watched the familiar streets pass by, wondering if this would be one of the last times I'd see them. The thought made my throat tight. This had been my neighborhood since Thomas and I first moved here as newlyweds. I knew every crack in the sidewalk, every seasonal decoration the corner store put up, every cat that sunned itself in particular windows. Judith was waiting at the door when I arrived. She'd been my lawyer for nearly 20 years, handling everything from Thomas's will to the small claims case when a neighbor's tree fell on our fence. She'd seen me through some of my worst moments, but the look on her face told me this might top the list. She read through everything, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "You never canceled this, Helen. Technically, he has authority to make certain decisions if you're deemed medically unable." "But I'm not unable," I said. "Correct. But if he got a doctor to say you were showing signs of memory problems or confusion, even just on paper, he could use this to challenge your decisions in court. It's not common, but it happens, especially in family property disputes." My stomach dropped. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "We need to cancel this immediately, and you need to be very careful what you say and sign from now on. Everything goes through me. Do you understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Judith took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "Helen, I have to ask, did you ever mention giving them your condo? Even as a passing comment? Maybe after Thomas died, when you were grieving?" I shook my head. "Never. I always planned to stay there. Robert knew that." She nodded slowly. "I had to check. Sometimes grief makes us say things we don't remember later." "I didn't say it," I said firmly. "I didn't even think it." "I believe you," she said. "But they're moving as if they have a claim. That's what worries me." When I got home that afternoon, my key didn't work in the building's front door for a moment. I panicked, thinking they'd already changed the locks, before realizing the door was just sticking because of the humidity. The momentary fear sent a chill through me. This was what my life would be now, questioning everything, doubting my own security in the place I'd lived for decades. As I rode the elevator up to my floor, I felt like a stranger in my own building. That night I didn't cook. I didn't clean. I sat at my table and made a list of everything I'd paid for in Robert's adult life. His college tuition that I'd covered when he lost his scholarship. Half the cost of his wedding. The loan for their fertility treatments 2 years ago that never happened. They weren't even trying then. They just said the word baby, and knew I'd open my wallet. And now this. The list was longer than I expected. Page after page of financial support, gifts, emergencies covered. I'd never thought about it as a tally before. It was just what mothers did. But seeing it all written down made something inside me harden. I'd been generous. I'd been kind. And this was how they repaid me, by taking the one thing I had left. I went to my bedroom and pulled down the photo albums from the top shelf. Robert in his high school graduation gown. Vanessa at their engagement party. Thomas and me holding champagne glasses in this very living room when we first moved in. The memories felt different now, tainted by Robert's betrayal. I flipped through the pages trying to see when it had changed. When had my son stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an asset? Was it after Thomas died? Was it when he met Vanessa? Or had it always been there, waiting for the right moment? I closed the book and picked up my phone. I texted Robert one sentence. We need to talk. Not through announcements or Pinterest boards. No reply for 3 hours. When it finally came, it was just a thumbs up emoji. That's when I knew I wasn't his mother anymore. I was his obstacle. A name on a deed, a problem to solve, something he needed to move out of his way. And he wasn't going to ask again. I took a long shower that night, letting the hot water run over me until it started to cool. As I dried off, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, gray hair, lines around my eyes, thinner than I used to be. But my eyes were clear. My mind was sharp. I wasn't confused or feeble or any of the things they might try to claim. I wrapped my robe around me and went to the kitchen. I made a cup of tea and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. This had been my view for over 3 decades. I'd watched as new buildings went up, as the skyline changed. Thomas and I used to sit here on Sunday mornings, reading the paper and planning our week. The thought of losing this home, this space filled with memories of a life I'd built, made my hands shake. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. Anger. Not the hot, reckless kind, but something colder and more focused. They thought I would just step aside. They thought I'd be grateful for their generosity in letting me visit my own home. They thought I was finished. They were wrong. I spent that night making lists. People I could trust. Assets I needed to protect. Places I might go if I had to leave quickly. I'd never been much of a planner. Thomas had handled most of that. But now, planning felt like the only control I had left. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight them on their terms. I wouldn't engage in public drama or family showdowns. I would be quiet, careful, and completely ruthless. If they wanted to treat me like a problem to be solved, I'd show them just how problematic I could be. I made one more call that morning to my old friend Margaret. We drifted apart over the years, but she'd been there for me after Thomas died. She'd also gone through a messy divorce where her ex-husband tried to claim she was unstable to get more assets. Helen, she said when she picked up. It's been too long. I need your advice, I said. About protecting yourself when family turns against you. There was a pause, then she said, give me 15 minutes to make coffee. This sounds like a long conversation. By the time we hung up an hour later, I had a plan. Not just to defend myself, but to take back control in a way Robert and Vanessa would never see coming. Margaret had given me names, financial advisors, security consultants, support groups for elder abuse. Resources I never thought I'd need. Remember, she said before we hung up, the best defense isn't just saying no. It's making sure they can't ask in the first place. I looked around my condo at the furniture Thomas and I had picked together, the art we'd collected over decades of travel, the worn spot on the couch where he used to sit and read. This wasn't just property. This was the physical space that held my history. I took a deep breath and started making calls. By noon, I had appointments with a new financial advisor, a locksmith, and a security consultant. I transferred my main accounts to a bank Robert had no connection to. I'd ordered a new phone that he didn't have the number for. Small steps. Invisible ones. But each one felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote out everything that had happened, from the dinner to the text to the social media posts. I included dates, times, exact quotes. I took screenshots. I saved emails. I created a record that no one could dismiss as confusion or misunderstanding. This wasn't just about keeping my home anymore. It was about keeping my dignity, my autonomy, my right to choose what happened in my own life. I went to bed that night and actually slept. Not well, but better than I had since the birthday dinner. In the morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. 2 days after the birthday dinner, a large envelope slid under my door while I was in the shower. No knock, no doorbell. I almost stepped on it with wet feet when I came out. I opened it right there in my towel, heart racing before I even unfolded the pages. It was a document titled, Preliminary Property Transfer Agreement. There was a line for my name already filled in, another for Robert, and another for Vanessa. The only blank line was for my signature. Attached was a note in Robert's handwriting. No rush. Just need this signed before Friday for the bank paperwork. Thanks again, Mom. Bank paperwork. They weren't just planning. They were already using my home as collateral. I sat on the edge of my bed, the paper trembling in my hand. I texted Judith again, and she called me within minutes. I sent her a photo of the document. "He's proceeding as if this is already decided," she said, her voice now calm but firm. "If you sign that, it's over. Don't even leave it on the counter unattended. Shred it." "He slid it under my door," I said. "That means he's creating a paper trail to make it look like you're participating voluntarily. Don't respond. Don't engage in writing." The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated. They had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. How long had they been waiting for the right moment? How many conversations had they had about the best way to take my home? That evening, I pulled out every legal document I could find, determined to understand exactly what was in my name. That's when I discovered another form from 2 years ago during my hospital stay, a health directive packet that included a limited financial authority designation, naming Robert as my proxy during incapacity. I remembered it now. He'd brought it to me while I was hooked up to 4 fluids, saying, "Just sign these so I can help with the insurance paperwork." I hadn't even read them, just scribbled my name to get him to stop bothering me. I'd been feverish, exhausted, just wanting him to leave so I could sleep. Judith confirmed it later that night. If they found a doctor willing to claim you were forgetful or confused, they could try to challenge your ability to manage your own assets. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be enough to tie you up in court. And if you agreed to anything over text without realizing what you were agreeing to, they could use that as evidence of consent. I went very still. I replayed the birthday dinner in my mind, the way Vanessa smiled while filming me, the way Robert kept using past tense language. Mom agreed. She's letting us. She said we could. It wasn't sloppy. It was rehearsed. He was creating a version of reality that they'd been building behind my back, and I had let them. Sleep evaded me again that night. I kept imagining Robert and Vanessa sitting in their apartment, planning how to take my home. Had they laughed about it? Had they congratulated themselves on their cleverness? Had they ever, even for a moment, considered how I would feel? With the first light of morning, I made my decision. I wouldn't just protect myself. I would ensure they never had the chance to try this again. I spent the next morning securing my finances, freezing my credit, changing bank passwords, revoking every form of authority Robert had ever held. I removed him from my emergency contacts. I started keeping records of every interaction and saving screenshots of every message. I called my doctor and updated my medical directives. I made sure the building management had written confirmation that no one was authorized to enter my unit without my express permission. I changed the security questions on all my accounts to answers Robert wouldn't know. That evening, I called the building manager and asked who had accessed the security gate the previous night. He hesitated, then said, "Robert used your spare key. He said he was checking on you." I hadn't asked him to check on me. I hadn't given him permission to enter. I asked if the locks could be changed, and the manager said yes, but it would require a formal request. So I filed one. That night, I moved all my important documents into a metal box and hid it. I stopped drinking wine with dinner. I stopped taking sleep medication. I needed to stay alert. I began writing down every interaction I had with Robert and Vanessa in case I needed to prove my mental clarity. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being hunted. The doorbell rang 3 days later. When I looked through the peephole, Vanessa stood there smiling as if nothing had happened, holding a gift bag and a coffee cup with my name misspelled on it. I opened the door halfway, not enough to invite her in. "Just thought I'd stop by," she said sweetly. "I was worried about you, and I brought your favorite hazelnut latte extra whip." She tried to hand me the drink, but I didn't move. "You didn't text first," I said. She laughed lightly. "I figured a surprise visit would be nice. You've been so quiet lately." She pushed the gift bag toward me. "It's prenatal vitamins," she said, eyes wide. "We're really hoping now. But you already knew that." I blinked. "You're pregnant." She put a hand on her stomach dramatically. "We weren't going to tell anyone yet, but after the dinner." She looked down, pretending to get emotional. "It meant so much that you gave us your place. We feel like it's a good sign." She wasn't pregnant. I knew it the moment she said it. Her eyes were too eager, too calculating. There was no softness, no genuine joy, just performance. Later, when she finally came inside after I reluctantly stepped aside, she put her purse down and went straight to my kitchen, opened the fridge, pulled out a sparkling water, and drank it without checking the label. No one that careful about a new pregnancy would be that casual about what they consumed. But I didn't say anything. I just watched. She started walking through my condo like she already owned it, talking about where the crib would go, how she'd repaint the walls, how she might remove the hall closet to open up the space. I stood in the corner of my living room, frozen, listening to her redesign my home as if I wasn't there. "This bookshelf," she said, running her fingers along the top. "We can donate it, right? It's a bit outdated." Thomas had built that bookshelf with his own hands our first year in the condo. I didn't respond. She continued opening drawers, looking in closets, commenting on what furniture was worth keeping. I followed her silently into the hallway. "We should probably turn this room into the nursery right away," she said, gesturing toward my sewing room. "You know, before you get too tired from climbing stairs. Babies need calm spaces, not clutter." Something in me finally snapped. But I still didn't yell. "Vanessa, when did your doctor confirm the pregnancy?" I asked quietly. She blinked rapidly, then laughed awkwardly. "It's early. Too early for tests. I just know." "So no ultrasound, no blood work?" "I mean, we're going Monday," she stammered. "Anyway, you'll be the first to know." Obviously. The word obviously rang in my ears like an insult. I watched her take her sparkling water back to the living room and scroll on her phone while her purse sat open on the kitchen counter. Inside, I spotted a manila folder. I waited until she went to use the bathroom, then quickly looked inside. I found copies of my condo's floor plan with new furniture placements marked and a printed estimate of its current market value. They weren't just planning to move in. They were already calculating what they could sell it for. I took a photo of the documents with my phone, put the folder back, and sat on the couch before she returned. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" I asked. She looked surprised, then smiled. "Sure, that would be nice. Should I call Rob?" "No," I said. "Just us." I served her freezer pasta and opened wine. Let her get comfortable. She left around 8 p.m., still talking about paint colors and baby names, completely unaware that I had seen what was in her bag. I locked the door behind her and pushed my heavy armchair in front of it. I wasn't scared. I was focused. I opened my phone, looked at the photos I'd taken, and started a new folder called Evidence. This wasn't family anymore. This was fraud. And now I had proof. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise and called my old friend Elaine, a retired real estate agent who lived about 40 miles away and spent most of her time gardening and avoiding her ex-husband's phone calls. Elaine didn't ask why I was calling at 6:15 a.m. She just said, "Talk to me." And I did. I told her everything: the birthday dinner, the fake pregnancy, the documents in Vanessa's purse, the story they were spreading about me willingly giving up my home. Elaine listened without interrupting, then said, "You need to get out before they realize you're onto them." She offered to help me sell the condo quietly through her network of private buyers. No public listings, no online photos, just word of mouth among serious cash buyers. "You'll get a bit less money," she said, "but it keeps them from interfering or trying to block the sale before it closes." I agreed immediately. The relief I felt at having a plan was overwhelming. For the first time since the birthday dinner, I could see a way forward that didn't involve surrendering to Robert and Vanessa's manipulation. For the next 3 days, I pretended everything was normal. I texted Robert short, friendly replies. I liked Vanessa's nursery ideas on social media. I posted a picture of my dinner one night with a caption about home cooking. I wanted them to believe I was still passive, still manageable. Meanwhile, I viewed a small property Elaine had found, a one-bedroom cottage about 3 hours away in a quiet lakeside community where nobody knew me and nobody was connected to Robert. The listing photos showed outdated kitchen cabinets and worn carpets, but I didn't care. It was private. It was mine. The seller was an elderly widower who wanted to move closer to his daughter. He agreed to sell for cash if I didn't haggle over the price. We shook hands the next day. While Robert and Vanessa thought I was watching TV shows and thinking about their nursery plans, I was arranging wire transfers and hiring movers for furniture I hadn't told anyone I was taking. I paid a man from my neighborhood, Frank, who had a truck and asked no questions. He packed up Thomas's workshop tools, the family photo albums, and my mother's china in a single afternoon. I told the building manager I'd be traveling indefinitely and not to share any information with family unless I specifically authorized it. He raised his eyebrows but nodded. I went to the leasing office and changed my emergency contact from Robert to Elaine. I set up a P.O. box in the new town for mail forwarding. I called the utility companies and scheduled service disconnections, using the excuse that I was temporarily moving in with a relative for health reasons. Every day, I maintained a neutral tone in my limited communications. I let Robert believe I was giving in. I let Vanessa believe I was grateful for their concern. But behind their backs, I was dismantling their entire plan. On the fourth day, Vanessa texted me a video of herself sitting on my living room couch, talking about bringing warmth back into this space. The caption read, "Soon to be ours but always Grammy's legacy." I didn't cry. I took a screenshot and saved it to my evidence folder. That night, I left a single hint. An empty suitcase in the hallway where Vanessa would see it the next time she stopped by without warning. She'd think I was packing for a short trip. She'd tell Robert. They'd think they still had time. They didn't. I was leaving before the week ended. And by the time they realized what happened, the keys would be in someone else's hands and I would be gone. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I had just finished a call with the title company, confirming that the condo sale would close in 3 days. All cash, no contingencies, just as Elaine had arranged. I had barely hung up when the knock came loud, insistent, not the polite kind. I didn't answer. I stood in the hallway, silent, listening. The knock came again, then a voice. "Mom, open the door." Robert's voice. I didn't move. I knew he'd try his key. I also knew I'd had the locks changed 2 days earlier. Something I hadn't mentioned to anyone. I heard the key trying to work, failing, then more knocking. "Mom, I need to talk to you." I waited. Eventually, he stopped trying the lock and started talking through the door. "Look, you're not answering my texts and Vanessa's freaking out. We need to know what's going on." I didn't reply. I just leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We found out about the realtor," he said, his tone changing. "Elaine called someone we know. You're selling the place? Are you serious?" Silence. "You're sabotaging your own family. Do you understand that?" More silence. Then his voice got lower, quieter. "If you don't open this door and talk like an adult, I swear I'll do what I have to do legally." He left after that, but not before sliding something under the door, another envelope similar to the first one. Inside was a formal letter from a law firm I didn't recognize, with a highlighted section that read, "Pending potential guardianship evaluation." I placed the paper on the table and called Judith. She answered immediately. I read the line to her. She sighed. "They're escalating. They're going to try to challenge your mental competence. They're not just pushing anymore. They're building a legal case." I felt a cold shiver run through me. This was what I had feared, them using the legal system to take what they couldn't manipulate me into giving. "Can they do that?" I asked. "They can try," Judith said. "But we've already revoked the power of attorney. We have documentation of your clear decision-making. And now we have evidence that they're trying to pressure you." Her voice hardened. "This is actually good for us. It shows their true intentions." That night, I sat at the kitchen table organizing my documents, making copies, recording myself explaining my financial decisions with dates and times, and uploading everything to a secure folder Judith could access. I attached screenshots, texts, emails, everything. I explained each decision clearly, without hesitation, with specific references. I showed the sale agreement for the condo, the purchase offer on the cottage, the inspection report. It was exhausting, but it had to be thorough. I wasn't just protecting my property. I was protecting my autonomy. Because once someone questions your mental capacity, people stop listening to what you actually know. The next day, Vanessa showed up alone. She didn't knock. She stood in the hallway, yelling loud enough for neighbors to hear through their doors. "We're trying to start our family and you're being cruel," she shouted. "You said we would have a home. You said we were welcome here." She pulled out her phone, and I saw the red recording light. She was filming this. I opened the door just enough to be seen, but not enough to be heard clearly, and I said only one word, "Leave." Her video caught that. Just that. Her crying, me looking cold and distant. That night, she posted the video online with the title, "When Family Betrays You, Expecting a Baby with Nowhere to Call Home." It had dramatic music, slow motion edits, and hundreds of comments within hours. People wrote things like, "How could a mother do this? Selfish behavior from a boomer who doesn't care about the next generation. She doesn't deserve grandchildren. I saved everything, documented it all, sent it all to Judith. Classic intimidation tactics," Judith said when I called her. "They're trying to use social pressure to force you to back down. Don't engage. Don't defend yourself online. Just keep documenting." The next day, Robert texted me one sentence. "If you want to avoid court, sign the attached and we'll forget all of this." It was a PDF. Another property transfer agreement. Vanessa had signed it. Robert had signed it. My name was left blank. I forwarded it to Judith without opening it. Then I texted Robert back for the first time in days. "You'll hear from my lawyer this week. Do not contact me again." Then I turned off my phone. By sunset, I had my bags packed, my important papers secured, and a note left for the new owners. "Everything here belongs to you now, except for the piece I'm taking with me." I looked around the condo one last time. 32 years of memories in these walls. Thomas and I bringing home our newborn son. Birthday parties. Holiday gatherings. The quiet evenings after Thomas died, when I'd sit alone on the balcony watching the city lights, learning how to be by myself again. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter that Thomas had installed himself. I touched the door frame where we'd marked Robert's height as he grew. For a moment, grief threatened to overwhelm me. Not just for my home, but for the family I thought I had. Then I remembered Vanessa's casual dismissal of Thomas's bookshelf, the floor plans in her purse, the way Robert had changed the locks without telling me, and the grief hardened into resolve. I left at 5 a.m., when the streets were still dark and quiet. The only sound was my rolling suitcase on the sidewalk outside the building I'd called home for over 30 years. I didn't look back. Elaine met me 2 towns over with coffee and a reassuring smile. "You did it," she said simply. We drove to the cottage together. It was early spring, and the trees around the lake were just starting to bud. The cottage itself was small, just a bedroom, a living area, a kitchenette, and a screened porch. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. No one here knew me. No one had expectations of me. No one was plotting to take what was mine. I unpacked just enough for that first night: sheets for the bed, a change of clothes, basic toiletries. The rest could wait. I just needed to breathe. I didn't check my phone. I knew what would be waiting. When I finally turned it on 3 days later, there were 42 missed calls, 23 voicemails, and over 70 text messages. Mostly from Robert, some from Vanessa, and several from numbers I didn't recognize. But it was the group messages that made my stomach clench. Family members, old friends, even my sister had been pulled into their narrative. Robert had sent everyone a long message about how I'd abandoned them just when they were expecting a baby. How I'd sold their home out from under them and disappeared like a thief in the night. The pregnancy lie was still going. But worse, people were believing it. I didn't reply to a single message, but I read them all. And the disappointment was crushing. People I'd helped through hard times, hosted for holidays, supported during losses, now saying things like, "I hope you come to your senses and family should stick together." It was clear Robert wasn't just rewriting our history. He was casting himself as the victim. But then something unexpected happened. My niece Jessica, who had never particularly liked Vanessa, texted me privately. "Aunt Helen, I don't believe any of this. Are you okay?" I replied, "Yes." Safe and finished with the drama. She sent back a heart emoji and said, "Call me if you need anything." I mean it. I didn't cry, but I felt something loosen in my chest. The quiet loyalty reminded me that not everyone was fooled. The next day, Judith called to confirm the sale had closed. The funds were transferred, the deed filed. Legally, the condo was no longer mine and never Robert's. "What about the guardianship threats?" I asked. She laughed shortly. "They won't risk filing now. You've outmaneuvered them. The social media campaign won't hold up in court once we show the actual timeline. But you should update your will immediately." I already had weeks earlier. Everything now went to a community foundation that supported elderly women starting over my cottage, my savings, even the small life insurance policy I'd maintained all these years. Robert and Vanessa weren't just excluded. They were legally barred from contesting it. That evening, I emailed the final copy to Judith, then poured myself a glass of water and sat on the front porch of my cottage, watching the sunset through the trees. It was quiet, not lonely, just peaceful. My phone buzzed one last time before I turned it off for the night. It was Robert. If Dad could see you now, he'd be ashamed. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what Thomas would say if he were alive. He'd say I should have done this sooner. It started with a package. No return address, no note, just a small white box left outside my cottage door, wrapped in tissue paper and ribbon like a peace offering. Inside was a framed ultrasound image and a card that read, "Can we start over? R&V." The image looked genuine at first glance, but I recognized it. Vanessa had posted the same stock photo from a pregnancy app months earlier as part of a manifestation board. They had printed a fake, framed it, and mailed it. I set it on the counter and didn't touch it again. 2 days later came an email. Subject line: dinner. Message: we'll be in your area this weekend. Let's just talk. No pressure, just family. I didn't respond. On Saturday evening, headlights appeared on my gravel driveway around 7 p.m., just as the sun was setting. I watched from the kitchen window as a black SUV parked at the edge of my property. They got out dressed for a formal dinner, Vanessa in heels that sank into the soft ground, Robert in a jacket, holding a gift bag. I didn't open the door. I let them knock. First softly, then harder. "Mom," Robert called out. "We just want to talk. We drove all this way." I stood inside with the lights off, hands resting on the back of a chair, not moving, not making a sound. Vanessa's voice joined his, suddenly breaking with emotion that sounded rehearsed. "You're shutting out your grandchild. Is that what you want?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They stood outside for nearly half an hour. I timed it. Eventually, the gift bag was left on the step, and they drove away without another word. The label on the wine bottle inside read, "Reconciliation, Cabernet Sauvignon." I poured it down the sink. That night, Robert sent one final message. "You win. Hope it was worth losing your family." I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot, added it to my evidence folder, and deleted his contact information permanently. The next morning, I had coffee with my new neighbor Diane, who had moved to the area after ending her 35-year marriage and starting a small candle-making business out of her garage. She laughed when I told her about the fake ultrasound. "People get desperate when money's involved," she said. "But you didn't give them what they wanted. That makes you dangerous to them now." I nodded. Dangerous felt new to me. Felt right. That week, I planted a garden, joined the local library, and volunteered at the community center's food pantry. I bought curtains for the cottage windows and a small bird feeder for the backyard. Each small act of settling in felt like a victory. When my phone rang again on Friday, it was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. It was Vanessa. "Hi, Helen. It's me. I know things got messy, and I just wanted to say we're still hoping to keep a door open for the baby, for the future. Please call." I deleted it because the only door that mattered was the one they would never walk through again. Over the next few weeks, I established a routine. Mornings in the garden, afternoons reading or exploring the small town, evenings on the porch watching the sunset over the lake. I met other residents, mostly retirees like me, people who had chosen this quiet place for their own reasons. None of them knew my story. None of them had expectations or judgments. I was just Helen, the new neighbor with the mint garden and the wind chimes. The final legal meeting with Judith wasn't dramatic. No mahogany-paneled office or shocked relatives. Just a quiet conversation over tea at a local cafe on a cloudy Tuesday morning. She'd driven out to see me, bringing the last paperwork that needed my signature. The final document sealed what I'd already known in my heart. Robert and Vanessa were officially removed from my will and all financial matters. No exceptions, no reconsideration clause, just a clear document stating that everything I owned, from my cottage to my savings to the silver photo frames on my dresser, would go to a community fund I'd established in Thomas's name, dedicated to helping older women establish new lives after family estrangement. Judith passed me a hard copy as she reviewed each page. "It's done," she said. "If they challenge it, they'll lose. The documentation is airtight." I nodded and took the folder, feeling its weight like a shield. "How are you doing?" she asked, her professional tone softening. "Really?" I considered the question. "I'm angry," I said finally. "Not all the time. But it's there." She nodded. "That's normal. You've been betrayed by the people who should have protected you. I keep wondering if I did something wrong. If I raised him to be this way." Judith shook her head firmly. "This isn't about your parenting, Helen. This is about greed and opportunity. Some people see vulnerability and choose to exploit it. That's not on you." I wasn't entirely convinced, but I appreciated her certainty. "What matters now," she continued, "is that you're safe, you're secure, and you've protected yourself. The rest will come with time." A few days later, Jessica called. "I think Robert knows about the will change," she said. "He's been posting those vague quotes about betrayal and ungrateful parents. And Vanessa changed her social media bio to chosen family only." I actually laughed, short and genuine. "Let them post whatever they want," I said. "They lost the right to my attention when they tried to steal my home." "I told Mom what really happened," Jessica added. "About the power of attorney and the fake pregnancy. She's coming around. Dad too." I felt a flicker of hope. My sister and her husband had been among those who believed Robert's version. "Thank you," I said. "You don't have to thank me for telling the truth," she replied. "That's the bare minimum." A week after that, I received confirmation that the foundation account was active under the name The New Chapter Fund, with my first contribution already allocated. I read the paperwork twice before filing it away. That night, I opened a bottle of sparkling cider and sat outside as the breeze came off the lake, scrolling through photos of my old condo that the new owners had shared with the real estate agent. A young couple with 2 small children had moved in. No manipulation, no schemes, just a family starting fresh. And in the corner of one photo, I could see Thomas's bookshelf still standing against the wall. They hadn't torn it down. They'd placed children's books on it. Felt like closure. My phone buzzed later that evening. A message from Robert's college roommate, of all people. "Heard what they tried to do. You were right to cut them off. Wish my father had done the same before my brother drained his retirement." I replied with a simple, "Thank you." Because the truth was, I hadn't just protected myself. I'd put a name to something many people experienced but never discussed. I was done being silent. And while Robert and Vanessa stewed in their fabricated grievances, I had rewritten the ending they thought they were entitled to create. I didn't give them a fight. I gave them absence. And that, I was learning, spoke louder than anything they could say. As spring turned to summer, my little garden flourished. I joined a book club at the library, and a walking group that met 3 mornings a week to circle the lake. I baked bread for the first time in years. I bought a bird identification guide and learned the names of the visitors to my feeder. Small pleasures. Simple ones. But they were mine, chosen freely, without manipulation or obligation. 6 months after I left the condo, I stood barefoot on the back porch of my cottage, holding a mug of tea made with mint from my garden box, watching birds trace patterns across the lake. I hadn't heard from Robert or Vanessa in over 2 months, not since the final legal notice barring them from contacting me about inheritance matters. They didn't contest the will. They didn't try again. I think they finally understood I was gone. Not just physically moved away, but emotionally removed from their lives. As if the version of me they'd once manipulated had disappeared completely. My days had a new rhythm now. Mornings in the garden, afternoons volunteering at the local shelter, evenings playing cards with Diane and the other women from the lakeside community. I'd made friends, real ones, who never measured my worth by what I could give them. The cottage had become more than an escape. It was a beginning. I cooked again. I laughed without restraint. I slept without checking my phone for messages or threats. The day before my birthday, I received a letter from Jessica with a photo of her newborn son and a note that simply read, "If he grows up to be half as brave as you, I'll have done something right." I pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a turtle and cried the kind of tears that clean rather than burn. The kind that wash away the last traces of regret. That evening, I wrote a check to a shelter that helps older women escaping financial manipulation, signed it, and sealed it in an envelope with the words, "For New Beginnings," written on the memo line. I thought about Thomas as I addressed the envelope, about what he would think of all this, about whether he would be proud of me for standing up for myself, or sad that our son had turned out this way. Maybe both. Grief is never simple, and neither is family. But I knew one thing for certain. Thomas had always valued honesty above all else. He would have seen through Robert's manipulation immediately. He would have been heartbroken, but he would have understood why I had to leave. As the sun sank behind the trees and the wind chimes Thomas had made years ago played softly in the breeze, my phone buzzed once more, an unknown number. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look. I turned it off and put it in a drawer. I didn't need it anymore, because this life I had built without an audience, without performance, without anyone applauding for something they helped destroy. This life was finally mine. The cottage was quiet and so was I. And for the first time in years, that silence didn't feel like something missing. Felt like freedom. Complete. Permanent. Exactly how I wanted it. Exactly what no one could take from me again. Some nights I still dream about the condo. About Thomas. About the life we built together. About the son we raised who turned into someone I no longer recognize. But the dreams don't haunt me anymore. They're just memories fading like old photographs. What remains is this. A woman who refused to be erased. Who looked at the story others were writing for her and said, "No, this is not how it ends." My story continues, written in my own hand, one quiet day at a time.